The morning sun poured over Maple Street like honey, warm and peaceful. Birds sang, sprinklers hissed, and the world seemed still, until the sound of bike tires broke the calm. Jamal, a 14-year-old black teen with bright eyes and quiet confidence, pedaled proudly on his brand-new bicycle. The wind brushed his face, and for the first time in a long while, he felt seen. That bike wasn't just metal and paint. It was his mother's love, Mrs. Thomas, a single nurse who'd worked double shifts for months just to make his birthday special. The initials, JT, were engraved on the frame, gleaming in the sun like a badge of pride. Jamal grinned, whispering to himself, "We did it, Mom." But that peaceful moment shattered in seconds. "Stop right there," a voice screeched. Ruth. The neighbor everyone avoided but no one dared confront. Middle-aged, sharp-tongued, and full of opinions, she stormed down her driveway like a judge and jury rolled into one. "What do you think you're doing on that bike?" she barked. Jamal slowed, confused. "Just riding, ma'am." "Don't lie to me," Ruth snapped. "I saw that exact bike at the store. There's no way a kid like you could afford something like that." Those words, "a kid like you," cut deeper than she knew. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. No one spoke. No one helped. Jamal tried to explain, voice trembling, "My mom bought it for me. It's mine, look, my initials." But Ruth wasn't listening. She'd already dialed 3 numbers. "Yes, I'm reporting a stolen bike. The thief's still here." Minutes later, red and blue lights painted the street. 2 officers stepped out, one resting a hand near his holster. Jamal's stomach dropped. He stammered, "Please, call my mom, she has the receipt." Mrs. Thomas arrived breathless, still in her hospital scrubs. Her eyes blazed. "That's his bike," she shouted, holding up the worn receipt. The serial number matched perfectly. The truth was undeniable. Ruth's face went pale as the officers nodded, apologizing to Mrs. Thomas and Jamal. But humiliation doesn't humble everyone, it hardens some. From that day, Ruth turned her embarrassment into obsession. She whispered in grocery aisles, at salons, during neighborhood meetings, painting Jamal as a liar, his mother as deceitful. And most believed her. Until one evening, the truth walked into her own living room. Her teenage son, Josh, sat quietly polishing a bike identical to Jamal's. Ruth froze. "Where did you get that?" Josh hesitated. "Jamal's mom sold it to me, cheap. So I'd have one too." Silence hit the room like thunder. The kindness Ruth tried to destroy had given her own son joy. But instead of remorse, fear crept into her veins. "Don't you ever tell anyone where it came from," she warned. Days later, guilt consumed Josh. At school, he saw Jamal eating alone, whispers still swirling. He sat beside him. "I'm sorry," he said. "You were right. My mom lied." And that night, he made a choice, to speak at the next HOA meeting. When the moment came, Ruth tried to silence him. But Josh stood tall, voice shaking yet strong. "Jamal didn't steal anything. He gave me his old bike. His mom showed kindness when no one else did." Gasps filled the room. Neighbors who once judged now glared at Ruth. Mrs. Thomas's eyes glistened, justice finally within reach. But Ruth didn't bow. She stormed out, fury burning behind her eyes. That night, she sat in the dark, fingers flying over her keyboard, filing a new complaint, this time against Mrs. Thomas's job at the hospital. "Let's see how kind she is when she has nothing left," Ruth hissed. She didn't know someone was watching her from the shadows, someone who had the power to destroy her lies once and for all. The night Ruth filed that false complaint, the glow of her laptop screen flickered across her face like firelight. Every word she typed dripped with venom, lies about Mrs. Thomas being unprofessional, rude to patients, and unfit for her position. She smiled coldly as she hit send, convinced she'd finally destroyed the woman who exposed her. Across town, Mrs. Thomas tucked Jamal into bed, trying to hide the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd fought so hard to clear her son's name, but she could still feel the stares at the grocery store, the whispers behind her back. She told herself it would pass, people always forget. But Ruth wasn't done. Not even close. 2 days later, Mrs. Thomas was called into the hospital administrator's office. The room was cold, too quiet. The administrator cleared his throat. "We received a formal complaint against you, Mrs. Thomas. It's serious." Her stomach twisted. "From who?" He hesitated. "Anonymous." Mrs. Thomas's hands shook as she read the document, a full page of lies. Her eyes welled with tears. "Sir, this isn't true. I've never done anything like this." "I believe you," he said softly. "But we have to investigate. You'll be placed on temporary leave." When she left the office, the world blurred. All she could think about was Jamal, how hard she'd worked to give him a better life, how one woman's hatred was tearing it apart. That evening, word spread fast. Ruth, of course, played innocent. "It's such a shame," she told her neighbors with feigned sympathy. "Some people just can't handle responsibility." But deep down, she was glowing with triumph. Until something unexpected happened. Josh. Her son hadn't spoken to her in days, barely looked her way. But that night, he walked into her room holding a folder. "Mom," he said quietly, "you need to stop." Ruth glared at him. "You don't understand. That woman humiliated me." Josh's eyes hardened. "No. You humiliated yourself. And now you're ruining an innocent person's life because you can't face the truth." He dropped the folder on her bed. Inside were printed screenshots, proof that Ruth had used her email to send a complaint. But there was more. Josh had recorded her earlier that night, mumbling to herself, boasting about how she'd taught that woman a lesson. "Delete this," she snapped. But Josh didn't move. "I already sent it." Ruth's blood ran cold. "Sent it? To who?" Josh swallowed. "To the hospital. To the HOA. To everyone you lied to." She froze. For the first time, her power slipped away completely. The next morning, the truth exploded through the community like wildfire. The hospital received the email thread and recording. Within hours, Mrs. Thomas's suspension was lifted, and Ruth's scheme was exposed publicly. Neighbors who once defended Ruth now crossed the street to avoid her. The HOA issued a public apology to Mrs. Thomas and Jamal. Even the local news picked up the story, nurse falsely accused by neighbor, son's courage exposes truth. At the next community meeting, Mrs. Thomas stood before the crowd, calm but resolute. "You can take away someone's peace, their reputation, even their livelihood," she said, "but you can't bury truth. It always finds a way to breathe." The room erupted in applause. Jamal watched his mom with pride, his hero, standing tall. Ruth sat in the back, pale and trembling, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Her son, Josh, sat several rows ahead, silent, but finally free. As the meeting ended, Mrs. Thomas walked past Ruth. For a moment, their eyes met, not in anger, but in understanding. Ruth's face broke, tears spilling as she whispered, "I'm sorry." Mrs. Thomas nodded softly. "I know. But some lessons come too late." Ruth left the meeting that night in silence, her reputation in ruins, her lies finally stripped bare. Weeks later, peace returned to Maple Street. Kids played freely again, laughter echoing under the sun. Jamal rode his bike, wind in his face, the same bike that once brought him shame, now a symbol of strength. And across the street, through her window, Ruth watched quietly, the woman who tried to destroy a family, now learning what it truly meant to be humbled. Because in the end, truth didn't just set them free, it set her face to the mirror she'd avoided all along. When you build your power on lies, it only takes one act of courage to bring the whole house down.